Hello and welcome to Tail Talk English. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional English stories. Today's story is emotional, dramatic, and full of betrayal, heartbreak, family conflict, and painful misunderstandings. It will also help you improve your English listening and vocabulary through simple conversations and real-life emotions. As you listen, try to imagine every scene, every expression, and every feeling. This is the story of a young woman who tried to protect her sister from the truth. My name is Olivia, and I am 20 years old. I live in a busy city and study literature at the local university. Most people think my life is normal, but they do not know the painful story that changed my family forever. When I was 10 years old, my parents died in a terrible car accident. Losing them was the hardest thing I had ever experienced. I felt alone and frightened. The only person I had left was my older sister, Grace. Grace was more than a sister to me. She became my parent. She worked long hours, paid the bills, helped me with school, and comforted me whenever I cried at night. She sacrificed many of her own dreams so that I could have a better future. Because of that, I trusted her completely. As the years passed, Grace built a successful life. She became a respected history professor at the university in our city. She was intelligent, hardworking, and kind. Her students loved her classes because she made history come alive. A few years ago, she married Daniel Brooks, another professor at the same university. Daniel taught political science. He was charming, polite, and well-respected by everyone who knew him. When people saw Grace and Daniel together, they often smiled and said they were the perfect couple. At first, I believed that too. Whenever I visited their house, Daniel seemed friendly. He always asked about my studies and encouraged me to work hard. Grace looked happy with him, and that was all that mattered to me. But slowly, something began to feel wrong. It started with small things. Sometimes I noticed Daniel staring at me during family dinners. When I looked back, he would quickly turn away. Other times, he would compliment me in ways that made me uncomfortable. "You look beautiful today, Olivia," he would say. At first, I thought he was simply being kind. Then the compliments became more frequent. Soon, I began to avoid being alone with him. I told myself I was imagining things. I did not want to believe there was a problem. One afternoon, I returned home after class and sat on my bed to study. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw Daniel's name. I opened the message. "Olivia, you looked beautiful today. I can't stop thinking about you." My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the words in disbelief. Maybe he sent it by mistake, I thought. Maybe it was meant for Grace. I decided not to reply. A few minutes later, another message appeared. "I wish we could spend more time together." Then another. "I know there is something special between us." Fear settled deep inside my chest. This was not a mistake. I still refused to respond. Over the next few days, the messages continued. Every morning, I woke up to another text. Every evening, there was another compliment. I felt trapped. I wanted to tell Grace, but I was afraid. What if she did not believe me? What if it destroyed her marriage? One afternoon after class, I walked outside and found Daniel waiting near the entrance. When he saw me, he smiled. "Olivia," he said softly. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I wanted to see you." My stomach tightened. "I have to go." Before I could walk away, he stepped closer. "You are very special to me." I immediately turned around and left. That evening, I cried in my apartment. I loved my sister more than anyone in the world. The thought of hurting her broke my heart. Unfortunately, Daniel's behavior only became worse. He sent flowers to my apartment, he waited outside my classes, he found excuses to speak to me whenever possible. One afternoon, he sent a message that made me feel sick. "You are the woman I should have married." I stared at the screen with tears in my eyes. How could he say something like that? How could he betray my sister so easily? For days, I struggled with what to do. Finally, I decided I had to tell Grace the truth. The next weekend, I visited her house. I was nervous. My hands trembled as I sat across from her. Before I could speak, Grace smiled excitedly. "Olivia, I have wonderful news." I forced a smile. "What is it?" She looked happier than I had seen her in months. "Daniel and I are trying to have a baby. We started IVF treatment. I hope I'll become a mother soon." The words hit me like a wave. I looked at her bright eyes and hopeful smile. She seemed so happy. Suddenly, I could not bring myself to tell her. The truth would destroy everything. So I stayed silent. As I drove home, I hated myself for not speaking, but I could not bear the thought of taking away her happiness. Days turned into weeks. The pressure inside me grew heavier. Then one evening, everything changed. I was reading in my apartment when someone knocked on the door. I assumed it was a neighbor. When I opened the door, I froze. Daniel stood there. My heart immediately began pounding. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He smiled. "I came to see you." "You need to leave." Instead of leaving, he stepped forward. "Olivia, I love you." My blood ran cold. "Stop! I can't stop thinking about you." "Daniel, you're married to my sister." "I don't care." The words made me feel sick. "You belong with me." "No!" He moved closer. I stepped back. "You don't mean that," he said. "I do." He reached toward my hand. That was enough. "Get out!" I screamed. He looked surprised. "Olivia, leave right now or I'll call the police." For a moment, he simply stared at me. Then he took a step backward. "Fine." A few seconds later, he was gone. I slammed the door shut and locked it. Then I sat on the floor and burst into tears. That night, I barely slept. I knew I could not remain silent any longer. The next morning, I went straight to Grace's house. When she opened the door, I immediately knew this conversation would change our lives forever. "Grace," I said, "please listen to me." She looked concerned. "What happened?" I took a deep breath. "Daniel came to my apartment last night." Her expression changed. "What?" "He said he loves me. He has been sending me messages for weeks." The room fell silent. I expected shock. I expected confusion. Instead, I saw anger. "No, it's true. No." "Grace, please listen." She stood up abruptly. "You're lying." My heart shattered. "What? Daniel would never do that." Tears filled my eyes. "He did." She shook her head. "You are jealous." I stared at her in disbelief. "Jealous of what?" "My marriage, my happiness." "Grace, that's not true." But she refused to listen. The more I spoke, the angrier she became. Finally, she slapped me. The sound echoed through the room. I stood frozen. I had never seen her look at me with so much hatred. Then she spoke words I will never forget. "You are no longer my sister." The pain was unbearable. "Grace, please, get out. I love you. Get out." Tears streamed down my face as I walked toward the door. I turned around one last time, but she had already looked away. That day, I lost the person I loved most. The nightmare did not end there. A few hours later, my phone rang. It was my friend Emma. She sounded angry. "Olivia, what did you do?" My heart sank. "What are you talking about?" "Daniel told everyone you tried to seduce him." I felt sick. "What?" "He said you're trying to destroy Grace's marriage." I could barely breathe. "Emma, that's a lie." But she did not listen. A moment later, the call ended. Within days, rumors spread across the university. Students whispered when I walked by. Friends avoided me. Some people stared. Others pretended not to see me. I felt completely alone. I stopped attending classes. I stopped answering messages. Most days, I stayed inside my apartment. I cried constantly. At night, I lay awake wondering if anyone would ever believe me. Then one evening, something changed. I was looking through my phone when I found the messages Daniel had sent. Hundreds of messages, photographs of flowers, screenshots, proof. I sat upright. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small spark of hope. I could prove the truth. The next morning, I printed everything. Every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. Then I walked to the university administration office. My hands shook as I handed the papers to a staff member. "I need help," I said. The woman reviewed the documents carefully. As she continued reading, her expression became more serious. "This is very concerning." Tears filled my eyes. "I'm telling the truth." She nodded. "We will investigate." For the next 2 days, I waited nervously. Finally, the university contacted me. They had completed their investigation. Several staff members had reviewed the evidence. They believed me. I almost cried with relief. For the first time, someone had listened. The university also spoke with Grace. They showed her every message, every screenshot, every lie. At first, she remained silent. Then her hands began shaking. Her face turned pale. The truth was impossible to deny. Later that evening, she found Daniel's old phone in a drawer. Inside were even more messages, more evidence, more lies. Everything finally became clear. That night, there was a knock on my apartment door. When I opened it, I saw Grace. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red from crying. In her hands was my childhood teddy bear, the same teddy bear she had given me after our parents died. Neither of us spoke. Then she wrapped her arms around me, and we both began to cry. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The pain in her voice was heartbreaking. "I should have believed you." I cried harder. "You were my sister." "You still are." She shook her head. "No, I failed you." We sat together for hours. Grace told me everything. After seeing the evidence, she confronted Daniel. At first, he denied everything. Then he blamed me. Then he blamed her. Finally, he admitted the truth. Hearing that confession had broken her heart. "I trusted him," she said through tears. "I know. He lied to me every day." I squeezed her hand. "You didn't know." She looked at me. "But I should have trusted you." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she hugged me again. "I love you, Olivia." "I love you too." A few weeks later, Grace filed for divorce. The process was painful. Years of trust and love disappeared. But she knew she could never stay with someone who had betrayed her family. During one court meeting, she looked directly at Daniel. Her eyes were full of sadness. "You hurt the two people who trusted you most." Daniel said nothing. "There is nothing left to save." Then she stood up and walked away. That was the last time she ever looked back. Months passed. Slowly, our lives improved. Grace moved into a new apartment. I returned to university. The rumors disappeared after the truth became public. Some people apologized. Others avoided discussing what happened. Either way, I no longer cared. The people who mattered knew the truth. Most importantly, my sister knew the truth. Today, Grace and I are closer than ever. Sometimes we cook dinner together. Sometimes we watch old movies and laugh about childhood memories. The scars remain, but they no longer control our lives. We survived something terrible together, and we became stronger because of it. Looking back, I learned an important lesson. Sometimes the people who seem kind are hiding their true selves. Sometimes speaking the truth is frightening. Sometimes people may not believe you right away, but that does not mean you should stay silent. Your voice matters, your truth matters, and no matter how dark things become, the truth has a way of finding the light. If you are ever in a difficult situation, remember this: do not give up on yourself. Keep speaking, keep standing up for what is right. The people who truly love you will eventually see the truth. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more emotional English stories. See you in the next story.